See lots of people trickling in. Welcome, Kimberly. Welcome, Bill. Welcome, Ruth. Nice to see your presence again. Welcome, Darren. And this is Autonomy Quest. My name's Carl Nieberding. Tonight I'm interviewing Autonomy graduate Paul Verge. And we're just going to wait a minute or two to get everyone in here. Feel free to chime in and say hi while you wait. If you want to, or if I happen to know you, it'd be great to see you again. And let's start thinking about what questions do we really want to know about autonomy tonight, or learn from Paul, or where are you at in your story, and what can we help you understand to get over that next hurdle in your journey to autonomy? And that's why we interview autonomy graduates. And I myself am an autonomy graduate, so it's a little bit about like that Spider-Man pointing at the other Spider-Man. Like it's all autonomy here, but each person has their own story, and Quest really lets you as a autonomy graduate or prospective student see all these really interesting journeys and stories about how people came to autonomy and how they transformed throughout autonomy and where it's taken them since. So I hope you're excited, and welcome Richard, Rick, Leah. Okay, great.
Hi,
So we've got
Carl.
hi. So we've
Hi,
got
good to see you.
yeah, thanks. Leah lives not too far from me, so I've met her cats, and I think she has one dog, but mostly cats.
One dog, sadly.
Yes. All right. So we've got a nice full house. Get comfy, get your popcorn or favorite beverage. And just briefly about me before I introduce our guest. My name's Carl Nieberding. I'm an Autonomy Season 9 graduate. So I think that's two years ago now, because Autonomy has 2 seasons a year. We're coming up on Autonomy Season 13 at the end of this month. So, we're really getting revved up about that. And my journey was as someone who worked in Silicon Valley technology companies and the big corps and in startups, and wanted to find their own way. And autonomy helped me to go independent, and now have my own consulting and facilitation practice. And our guest tonight, who I'll be interviewing, is Paul Verge. And in the email, I want to read the nice introduction that Richard or whoever wrote that email typed up for him, just to give Paul a proper welcome, because Paul's a really great guest. And it's my first time meeting Paul. So the questions tonight will be authentic, because I'm as excited to get to know him and his journey as you will be. So Paul Verge is a passionate storyteller, autodidact, and independent media producer with expertise in writing, filmmaking, and logistics. Since 2001, he's written and co-produced several feature-length documentaries, including Hijacking Humanity and The Ultimate History Lesson with John Taylor Gatto and Richard Grove, which anyone who's been through autonomy is very familiar with, along with dozens of short films, commercials, and sketches. He currently writes and produces full-time, focusing on creative projects that challenge the status quo and inspire critical thinking. So Paul, welcome to Autonomy Quest. It's great to have you here tonight.
It's a genuine pleasure to be here.
Excellent. And before I get started with the typical Autonomy Quest questions, I see in your nice Chrome, which some of us who go through autonomy, we might take pro media and learn how to use all this streaming software. Like me, I have a background, but Paul has a really cool lower third and animations. So what keeps you busy these days? How did that intro reflect on what you actually do or what you think of yourself? I'm guessing you're part of GTW. Is that correct?
I am a recent joinee of GTW, but I have been making short films, comedy sketches. My first documentary in 2006, started producing. which was Hijacking Humanity, got released in 2008, and that was when I first connected with Mr. Richard Grove. So yeah, I've been making things for 25 years almost, and am self-taught. And yeah, I sort of shifted from the first 5 years of teaching myself to trying to actually make something out of what I was learning, and that ended up being the documentary Hijacking Humanity. And then from there, had quite a good run, mostly with Rich. We did 2020 Hindsight, Censorship on the Front Line. We did What You've Been Missing, and then a friend of mine and myself were able to help co-produce on the John Taylor Gatto project, but we didn't actually get to help out in person. And that ended up being probably the most significant project that we were able to contribute to in any way. And then from there, I've been developing my writing, developing my business acumen, and it all led to 2019, where the final piece of the puzzle, at least for me, was to sign up for the very first season of AUTONOMY. And the skills I learned there just have taken things to the next level, let's say.
Excellent. So you are an OG autonomy graduate, I must say, because there's only one first season. That's excellent.
Yeah,
So it sounds like you met Richard as you got started your um, film production career. Could you tell me a little bit the story of how you met him and what that experience was like?
for sure. Well, he kind of inspired me to reach out because I heard his 2 hour Project Constellation recording in the summer of 2006. And that reaching out to him, cold calling him, he was super receptive, super warm, and encouraged me to go to New York for the fifth anniversary of 9/11. And so I ended up going on a trip for the very first time to New York on the fifth anniversary. Met Alex Jones, Luke Rudowski, Jason Burmis, a whole litany of known names now, but at the time probably only Alex Jones would have been the only person anyone would have known of. And took 5 days worth of footage there, and that would be September 2006. So then by November of 2006, I was able to fly out to Connecticut and actually connect with Rich and Lisa directly, and interviewed Rich for several days, of which clips from that ended up in Hijacking Humanity. And then over the years, we would go to each other's hometowns. Rich and Lisa came up to Vancouver a couple of times, and I kept going back to Connecticut for different projects. And then 2018 we went to PorcFest together, and I think that's kind of where the seeds of AUTONOMY started up. Where Rich has been at this whole enterprise of trying to connect people with empowering information for like quite a long time, and he was doing it through various media offerings, and I was happy to contribute what I had learned, and we kind of pushed on each other to improve our game. And so I've watched Rich just go leaps and bounds ahead, and so now I've also sort of caught up to the production value side of things. And so yeah, it's really just been about being inspired, taking action, and then using the results of that action to inspire others.
Yeah, that's amazing. And video production isn't something I thought much about before AUTONOMY, but just from Richard's example and from what we learn in the program, this ability to make our own media and publish it online, it's so powerful because we're now able to compete with what before was just told to us in school or on the mass media. And so I now have a much greater appreciation for the potential and for people like you who do it as a profession. So yeah, go for it.
I was gonna just comment on that, and first of all say thank you. It When something looks good and you don't have to think about the lighting or the camera angle and all that stuff, then the people producing it are doing their job. And it's one of those things you have to arrive at little by little by consuming enough media to realize what works and what doesn't, and then figure out how to use all these tools to augment your storytelling. Because at the end of the day, we're taking information we've learned, taking what's useful, repackaging it in the form of hopefully something compelling. And storytelling is the most at least to me, compelling delivery mechanism of important information and lessons. And the better your production value, the more easy it is for people to consume it with less resistance, let's say, as opposed to when we're starting out. And you can look at Rich or my early media works just to see the growth over time. Yeah, I've got lights down too low, or the mic's too far away, or stuff is out of focus, and it's just through the experience of trying, failing, learning from the failures, uh, going into the next thing armed with the wisdom from previous mistakes, you get better little by little. And it just reminds you to keep pushing and keep trying, because your last project's always going to be um, the results of all that wisdom, and so your next one will be your next best project.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because as we're trying to do, especially something new in life, you have to suck a little bit at first. And it's only by continuing to push through it that you're going to get those incremental step-by-step improvements. So when you encountered autonomy, it sounds like you'd had some momentum in your career. Did you feel stuck in any areas, or was it more you were trying to get to the next level?
Yeah, it has. There's a period probably around 2011, 2012. I had been making my second film of just myself called Believers Beware, and encountered roadblock after roadblock and barrier after barrier until I lost most of the film, like a ton of the footage, ton of the work, and was able to recover like a small fraction of it and put it out online. But it was super demoralizing. I felt like I, disappointed everyone's expectations. And at the same time that was failing, I started developing a business with some friends and worked for that really hard for 2 years. And then that went completely sideways. And my friends and I all lost a lot of money and time. And so the combination of those two events, by 2015, I was in a lower place than I had been in for quite a while, pretty dejected, not feeling confident in my creative work, was getting super disorganized. And yeah, I started reclimbing, let's say around 2016. I got a new job, something that was a little more empowering. And for 3 years, I was kind of flailing around trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I got the urge to reconnect with Rich and Lisa, 2017, 2018. And then 2019 is when they launched Autonomy. And that was, like I said at the beginning, it was kind of like the final piece to unlock my own potential puzzle, because my last few barriers at that point were like not having good organization, getting distracted too easily, so taking on way too many things at once and not being able to focus, which results in like procrastination of sorts, like an analysis paralysis, and not living to like key principles like integrity, making sure that I didn't under promise and over deliver. I found myself over promising and under delivering, which then causes the whole shame and guilt and going radio silent and all those unhealthy patterns that one can accrue when they're not in the best headspace. So it was really at the perfect time, especially just before the pandemic, just before I was about to get married as well, that Rich is like, "Hey, we're doing this thing called Autonomy. We would love you to be part of the first season." And I think he knew that I was somebody who he's someone who's aware of both my gifts and my flaws. So I think he saw the potential for me to be able to enroll in that, and especially the 19 um, points of excellence, like the 19 things that make an autonomous person. I keep printouts of that wherever I'm working, just to remind myself that these are like, it doesn't get any more pure in terms of principles of excellence. And then from there, just started applying those principles over the last 3 years, especially through COVID. And yeah, now I'm excited to talk about the success that my wife and I have had since we did the course, because it's been way beyond our biggest dreams.
Well, yeah, that's really inspiring to hear. I'm sure autonomy was a little different in season one compared to how it's evolved today, but I imagine the core was the same. You had the live lectures with Richard and you had the community. What was your experience like in autonomy? Like, what made it transformative? Was it those points of excellence? Was it the lectures, the community, or did you put additional focus into making a intentional transformation, or what was your experience like?
I'll be really honest. I approached it at the beginning, um, where I would listen to the lectures more in the background, and then my wife would come in and be listening with me, and she would be like, "Hey, can you turn that up? That sounds really interesting." I I've consumed hundreds of hours of Rich's talking,
Mm.
and he is almost nothing but wisdom to share, even from his anecdotes and all his research. Um, so I was almost using it as a tool to subconsciously
Mm.
program myself, like Richard Grove binaural beats. And so I actually started getting a little more active with the community because I'd met a lot of the people who were enrolled in autonomy during the Red Pill conference in the summer of 2019. And so I could actually put a face to a name. And so I, yeah, started communicating with people in the community. But ultimately, the thing that helped me the most, not just the 19 points of excellence, but having some accountability. That was the biggest thing. There's lots of people in the autonomy community that are willing to be like an accountability buddy, to hold you to your word, to make sure that you follow through on the thing that you're promising you're going to do. And it's great because sometimes that's the kick in the butt that I've needed, or someone, it's not somebody's job to light a fire under my butt, but when they do, I respond very positively and get stuff done quite quickly. So I just found in that regard, knowing what my strong points and my weak points are, that helped. It helped me reformulate my habits, to recondition myself so I didn't need someone else to keep lighting fires under me, and I was able to do it for myself finally.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've definitely had a similar experience. And one thing people may not know is autonomy is selective about who we invite to join the community, because we don't want to just let anybody in. So when you do meet someone, they're motivated, they're ethical, they want to be excellent, and it's easy to find accountability buddies like that because you've got a high caliber of people already. But how would you describe the autonomy community and how that impacted your experience?
Well, I think having the intake, the fact that they screen people, um, it's actually refreshing because a lot of people are looking to connect with others, but not necessarily to bring value. A lot of times people want attention, or they want other people's energy, or they want an audience to share what they have to say. And that's totally cool. But autonomy is not necessarily the right place for that. I think I was right in that spot where I knew I needed to do some personal growth. And I've read all the self-help books and done, other types of courses, but never something where I know the person who's constructing it, I know they're of high integrity, and I know that their screening process for others is meticulous. Like, they can identify with over 99% accuracy who this is going to truly benefit, who's there to do the work and take it seriously, and who's there to waste time and kind of just suck energy out of a room. And they're able to sort of parse those people. And I think Rich put it best, where it's a way to weed out people that it wouldn't be a good fit for, but it's also a good way to guide people who it's perfect for into the community. And yeah, so just having that fact, the fact they're not just letting everyone in who wants to join, uh, guarantees that you're going to be having more meaningful interactions with people, that your time is served when you're helping someone else. It's much less likely that they're going to be a time waster or an energy vampire. And yeah, I've just found that I've made friends and connections from multiple seasons, remaining as an alumni, and even was able to give back on season 8, helping head up one of their mastermind groups for 12 weeks, I believe.
Oh, yeah, Mastermind's actually one of my favorite things. I don't know if they had them in season one, but you got to lead one. Could you talk a little bit about how that works and how that impacts the season to complement the lectures?
Yeah. Well, for season 8, I had a good group of 6 people from all over, several from actually the Pacific Northwest, but then people in Asia, people in Europe, and it was it was great to get that different mix of perspectives. And keeping it at 6 people per mastermind was, you could probably handle 8 or 10, but so that everyone got a chance to be in the hot seat at least twice. I thought it worked really well. And we were able to, for the majority of the students that were in there, we were able to take whatever project or goal they had and move it forward somewhat, right? It's ultimately up to the individual to take the advice from everyone else and see how they apply it into their own life. But I just found it super constructive. Everyone's good natured. Everyone's trying to uh, get the best, like do the best for themselves, but offer genuine constructive feedback. It didn't feel like it wasn't stressful to be in the hot seat. It was very useful. And yeah, I ended up communicating with several of the students outside of that mastermind just to help them with whatever personal projects that they were working on in the capacity that I could. And yeah, it's nice to give back because I got so much benefit from it that if I can help people in any way get a little bit further in what they're trying to do, then it's just good karma.
Yeah, and I find it's nice that those small groups let you get, as you said, to get to know some of your classmates and follow their progress throughout the season because everyone's working on something a little different and they've got different backgrounds, but you're actually all trying to improve similar personal characteristics or work ethic things, or you're trying to build something you weren't sure you could do and you need that moral support and accountability. So,
Exactly.
so when you went through the season, because you mentioned another great aspect is a lot of people come back as alumni and they help out, or they've built new skills and now they help the next class. But when you went through, did you, over the course of the season, a lot of people do start off listening to the lectures in the background. Rich actually suggests, like clean up your home office or your house while you're listening to the first lectures because it starts nice and easy, just letting go of things you don't need anymore, but it builds to a crescendo. So how did your season build and how did it help you to face your fears to get unstuck, make progress?
I would say I had a slight advantage in that I was aware of probably at least 70% of what the lectures would be about, some of the subject matter that it covers in terms of like the history of education and sort of the deprogramming aspect and trying to like give context to the 12, 15,000 hours of education that we all receive. So part of why I put it on the background was so it wouldn't be as intrusive to my wife, but she ended up digging it when she was listening. And also having that familiarity. Um, my wife got a huge education out of it. And I found that, and I'm sure the lectures have evolved obviously over the last 13 seasons, but there is stuff in there when he got to all the stuff about building your own business, about the art of sales. That's all the stuff that I'd always wondered about, but never really um tried to bother Rich about. It's stuff I knew he knew, but I never, it hadn't been relevant in our relationship as much. So I'd never tried to pick his brain. And here he was like putting all that out in this like beautiful course. So I was like, okay, this is the real, that the high value stuff. Once he's able to just share the lectures help set the stage, they help contextualize everything so that you're in the best mode to receive what he shares in the rest of the course, which is the really nourishing and actionable information to help tangibly build whatever it is that you want to do, right? But it's, I think the biggest thing he's trying to do in those first few lectures is to make you aware of your own mindset, the idea of an employee mindset where we're used to being told what to do, where we have provisional self-esteem and we're used to all the, the 7 habits that are put onto us through the public education system. And once you're aware that that exists as a thing, then you're able to face it head on and tackle it and impact it in a positive way, and then start to make that shift to the more entrepreneurial mindset, which was where I would say the second half or the later part of the autonomy course goes into. And for me, that was just like pure meat and potatoes, which are my favorite meal. I was just like actively listening to everything and trying to take in as much as I could because I was like, hey, this is stuff I'm really going to be able to apply into my life.
Yeah, it's a great point about those early lectures because it's almost like we're the ones holding ourselves back, and you've got to free your mind and unlearn those habits of thinking you've got to ask permission, you're not good enough, you can't learn new things. And but I'm curious, in your world, did you have a need for sales and marketing? Did you have preconceptions about that? Had you tried it before? And what was your experience there?
Yeah, I had preconceptions because I had tried and failed, or at least in my own eyes, hadn't been as successful as I had wanted to be. Right. So, I was doing documentary films. They weren't earning enough to be sustainable. I didn't understand the business model to create some way to make that sustainable. Then when the DVD market sort of fell through, and I realized, okay, well, making documentaries and selling DVDs isn't going to be really a viable thing anyway. And then like fell into working on this other technology business with my friends, and that ended up taking up my time, uh 2012, 2013. And so that was probably when I was the most disconnected from, my from Rich and those and everyone on that side of things. And it's only when I started to come back to that and realize that I wanted to do creative stuff again, and this time I came back more humbled because I had a better idea of what I didn't know. I now knew better what I didn't know. I knew how wide the gap was between what I thought I knew and what I needed to know. And so that humility makes you a little bit more open to receiving information. It lowers your cognitive dissonance because you're like, I really need to learn some stuff. I don't really know as much as I think I do. And so I felt like that attitude was the right one to start learning stuff about sales and marketing, stuff I'd kind of been cynical towards because, I realized I was kind of turning into a doom scroller where I felt the world, everything was a conspiracy, that the world was so messed up that there's like, why even earn a living? It's all going to go for nothing, right? As I was developing a much cynicism. And it took a little while to realize that's a mindset issue. That's almost a way that we justify our own laziness, is with nihilism, is just to be like, well, what's the point of anything? And then I realized the point is you get to make the point. You get to create your own purpose in life, and that's like enormously freeing. And so with that in mind, I was like, okay, I really need to start. I'm good at learning myself. I'm good at autodidacting things, but if there's other people who know even more than you, it would be foolish not to at least tap their brain. And so I felt lucky that I got to sort of on the periphery see Rich developing the autonomy course. And so then when I took it, I had a little bit of an idea what I had in store, but it far exceeded my expectations because there was so much tangible and actionable information, right? I didn't know about creating sales funnels and lead pages and all these things that are now just like common terms with me and my wife, but just like, or the purpose of a newsletter or mailing list. These are all things I'd just never done in 20 years of making media. I built websites, I built these tools for other people, but just never thought how they could be useful to myself. And now I realize how essential they are, and I'm so glad that I went with that intuition to be like, yes, I will, quote unquote, be a guinea pig for Autonomy season one. And you could argue that that was the least developed season of Autonomy. That's only gotten better and better and more developed. So I feel like if I've had this much positive outcome from the first season, then people who are going to season 12 and 13, especially with all the great alumni who are coming back and sharing their wisdom and experience, there's never been a better time to get into the community.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. And it's interesting, like we've got to almost humble ourselves before, whether it's through, just experience, trial and error, or, realizing there is stuff other people know that we don't, before we're willing to learn something new. And I think the other thing that happens with sales, especially in this world, the freedom movement, people who want to make good things for the world, they often don't feel like they deserve to charge money. It's like it's a huge ethical issue for them. And how would you describe Richard's ethical system of sales? And did you guys do the integration exercises, which is like a partner-based homework where you'll role play certain conversations and any of that sort of style?
Yeah, actually, the integration exercises have kind of been around since the beginning. just because it's a useful form of role playing to try out the skills that you're learning, right? If one of the skills is you're trying to build rapport with somebody, well, the best way to do that is to ask questions to them, get people to talk about themselves. And for whatever reason, if you give someone the space to talk about themselves and actively listen and ask follow-up questions and show interest, they will be your best friend. That's just a human phenomenon. People love to talk about themselves. Here I am on Autonomy Quest talking about myself. I'm having a great time and happy to be here. It's this phenomenon where if you validate a person's existence by showing them genuine, authentic interest and really listening to them, that person feels heard and validated. And it's about getting someone into a state of mind where they're not resistant, so that when you're delivering value, they actually see the value. They're not trying to defend against the proposition of value. And to me, Rich is one of the few guys that I know who, if he doesn't think he can do it, he doesn't promise it. He doesn't try and get your hopes up. He's like, he makes very realistic assessments and then very realistic promises. And so that allows him to stay in integrity, because he would rather over deliver and under promise than do the opposite. And I think that's one of the reasons people, they like the quality of his work. He shows his homework, right? He shows all the research that he does to back up what he's talking about. But when people talk to him, they don't just get dismissive answers. There's a lot of high regard that he, I think, holds for people who are open-minded and genuine and coming in good faith. And so, yeah, his approach, he's easy to listen to, but he boils things down. Even though it can sound sometimes complex, he boils things down to the bare essentials, so that just about anyone can understand it. If you just, sometimes you got to listen a few times, but that's that's why I like that. Even after you graduated autonomy, you can keep coming back to listen to the lectures, or to relearn the information. And he's always encouraging people to take notes, because again, he's one of the few guys I know who can give you so much value for your time by densely packing a lot of useful information into a small package or a short period of time. And so even the longer lectures are just jam packed. And it's like, okay, you're extracting gold nugget after gold nugget. And at some point you go, wow, I'm surrounded by all these gold nuggets. Where's the diamonds, I guess? And then he's got himself and the community available to ask those questions or to drill down. And so, yeah, that level of accessibility, wisdom, integrity, and then just the pure knowledge, um, combined. It's again, I'm just really glad that I've had that opportunity to be a part of it and to give back, and now to continue to try and balance between wanting to give back more and applying the principles from autonomy that I learned into the business with my wife and I, which is just taken off.
Yeah, wow. And I think you were fortunate that you knew Richard in advance of autonomy. What's great about the program is in autonomy every week, Richard does a lecture that you mentioned. So there's like a lecture you kind of sit back and listen to. And he also does 2 Q&A sessions. So those are interactive. And my experience with those is like people will just ask all sorts of questions. And though you point out like Richard won't promise something he can't deliver on, like he knows so much, he feels like he just can answer or point you in the right direction, introduce you to something you haven't thought of, or make a new connection. So I found those Q&A sessions really valuable. I think the current season also has like, there's a few tiers, like everybody gets the lectures and Q&A, and a few people can join a mastermind with Richard if they want extra help with him. But did you interact with Richard much during the season? And of course, you knew him already, but can you talk at all about those Q&A sessions, and which you mentioned already?
Yeah, and I forgot to address what you'd asked before, which was about like the perception of money as well, I believe,
Hmm.
and how Rich had really helped reshape that for me, at least, because again, I was pretty cynical towards sales and marketing. Um, so yeah, with the lectures and the Q and A's, you know, I try and interact with Richard in a way that brings value because I feel like I've already had all my personal questions answered throughout the years. I don't really need to bother him with stuff like that. Um, but I always value his perspective on things. So sometimes, reach out, hey, what's your perspective on this? Or have you seen this piece of media? Um, where he and I think he does this a lot in the Q&As to help people getting over those self-imposed mental blocks or mental humps or whatever. A lot of them are emotional blocks, actually. And one of my biggest ones, I'm a Capricorn, for whatever that means to anybody, but traditionally in the stereotype of a Capricorn, we are, I won't say afraid of money, but we have money anxiety in our lives. And so that's been true for me for whatever reason. And part of that was I just had an unhealthy relationship with money because in my childhood, we were very poor. So I associated lack of money with stress. And even though I started learning about abundance philosophy and spirituality at an early age, I didn't quite understand how to practice that as a mindset. So I understood it conceptually, but not experientially. And so credit to Rich, who, he's been all over the financial map in terms of being super wealthy and not so wealthy at all. Um, and you really start to learn what has true value in life, and you learn not to take things for granted when you've been on both sides of the coin. And so he helped me realize that it's first of all, I had it wrong. I thought the love of money, or I thought money was the root of all evil. And he's like, it's the love of money actually is the root. If you're putting money above the value of human life, if you're choosing money at the expense of human suffering, and all these things, he added perspective to, and realizing money is a tool, that it represents energy, and that energy is really a symbol of effort, or vice versa. And so I've now got the sort of philosophy that in whatever form, you get back the energy you put out into the world, the efforts you make, whether it's in creative projects, the efforts you make with your kids, the efforts you make with your relationships, your job, you really do tend to get back in some way, not always financially, but the energy that you put out there. So if you're coming at it from a very, this term, scarcity mindset, it's the idea where there is not enough, where things are running out, where everything's tough competition, and it's a lot of win lose or lose lose scenarios. He shifted my mindset, or helped me shift my own mindset, to see the win wins, to realize that my time has value. Check this out. This is just a side anecdote. I'm a technology IT guy as my old day job. That's where my logistics background comes from. And it's great for building computers, doing video editing, got into camera work and all that stuff. But um, having that IT background, I thought, taught me all kinds of problem solving. Um, and let's see here. I'm totally going to lose my train of thought on this one. So I apologize. Uh,
Yeah, I
my
also have a computer science background.
Oh, no way.
You know, yeah.
Microsoft certified, all these things. Well, it ended up, so I didn't have the best relationship with money, in terms of always thinking that I'm not going to have enough. I got to work check to check. And, this isn't going to result in me attaining anything in my life. Um, and so when I started to make that shift from the mindset to go from being an employee doing IT work for like 8 years, I was kind of scared because there's a lot of comfort associated with the regularity of showing up to that day job. And I was afraid of failure. I was afraid of discomfort. And taking the lessons from what I got from autonomy was that failure is your friend, that as long as you don't quit, you can learn from your mistakes, so that your pain of mistakes always has a point. There's always a purpose behind it, as long as you've learned something from it and can apply that in the next thing that you do. And so that started to shift my mindset, that even in failure there was an abundance of wisdom. And so then how that applied to money, is I went to the Red Pill conference with Rich, and he's interviewing Robert Kiyosaki, and Kiyosaki starts talking about how he does everything with debt, how he doesn't treat money like it's this burden. And he's, I didn't necessarily agree with all his perspectives, but he sort of shook something in me about looking at money as a tool as opposed to this source of anxiety. It's like, would you get stressed about a hammer or a paintbrush or any of these things that are tools to help you express? And then, so the combination of that, meeting my wife, who has a very, very positive relationship with the idea of money and wealth, it was like a 1-2 punch. The autonomy course, Rich's kind of like helping me shift my perspective and mindset, and then my wife being like, you need to have a better relationship with the idea of money and abundance, really. And yeah, the last 4 or 5 years has really been seen a huge shift in that perspective, especially after COVID, because I was put out of work, my wife was put out of work, and we had to hustle to start up a business because no one would hire us. And so it became a matter of necessity. And I was like, thank God we learned how to do all these things 2 years ago from the autonomy course, or we would be completely, I don't know where we would be, but we wouldn't be sitting here having this chat.
Yeah, once you work for yourself, you realize the necessity of marketing and sales. I think prior to that, I was like, um, you know, it, you should do sales ethically, but everyone's so afraid to charge money. Well, when that's your livelihood, you become a lot more motivated and focused on doing it well. And that's when you're actually paying attention to your customer too, because you really want to help them because they're going to help you. And like you said, that reciprocity, what you put out into the world is what you get back when you're doing it ethically. So,
And you just reminded me of the where I lost my train of thought, and I was telling the story about being
oh,
an
great.
IT guy, was because I was undervaluing myself. I was doing work for people for next to nothing, charging them $10 or $15 family rates because I just wanted to be liked. I really cared about them liking me because I didn't have high self-esteem. I didn't have much self-esteem. I lacked confidence, so I was a people pleaser. So I dramatically undervalued myself, was giving away my labor and my effort for free. And then I got tired of doing that and started getting resentful to people who were like, I'll take as much as you're willing to give. And so that was the main point I wanted to make before I lost my train of thought. Rich really did a good job of helping me awaken my understanding of my own value and knowing how much to charge. Now, I'm like, my time's worth like $500 an hour. And someone's like, really? And I'm like, I know how to make $500 an hour doing stuff. So unless you can beat that, then giving you even 15 minutes of my time is worth $125 to me. Like that's where I'm at these days. So it's been quite a shift because my old self would have been like, oh, that's egotistical, that's pompous, that's arrogant and conceited. You think your time's worth $500? And my question is, why isn't your time worth $500? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you've invested in yourself, I realize what autodidacts do with self-learning is you're self-investing, right? You're investing your time and energy into learning a skill, practicing the skill, like you said at the beginning of the conversation, risking sucking at the beginning to get through that little suckage period to get to being mediocre and then finally average and then finally skilled and then excellent. And so once Rich framed it out as this is the path to excellence, there's no shortcuts, but there's the harder path and the less difficult path, let's say, a more efficient path. Then I was like, okay, this is the highest value thing I've seen is autonomy's offering the most efficient path to excellence, right?
I like that.
Like
We should write that down.
it's just, it's I really thought I knew a lot by 2019. I turned 40 years old. I met Rich when I was 27. I really thought I knew a lot at 40, and I learned more in those compressed time frame from 40 to 42 than I probably did in the previous 15 years. And a huge chunk of that learning is from autonomy. It recontextualized things, but it just gave me so much information that was suddenly relevant to my life. It's probably a lot of it might have even been information I've come across in passing in the past, but all condensed and presented in the right way where it was suddenly super relevant. And thus I was just like very eager to absorb it and then apply it. And then the proof is in the pudding as far as I'm concerned, because the application of all of the things I've learned in autonomy and being able to hit up former alumni, everyone's got different skill sets. So you're really getting much more than just access to Rich and his lectures and all the wisdom he has to share. You're getting access to the whole community of like hundreds of people who come from different walks of life with different perspectives, different experiences, different skill sets from different parts of the world. And because they're all pre-screened, it's not, you're not going to get it into like shouting matches like on Facebook, right? You're not going to have meaningless conversations of emotionality where you're just launching talking points at each other. It's tons of constructive. It's a great place to get critique on your work because people will be super honest because they're invested in your betterment just like you're invested in their betterment. So yeah, I've just found it to be a really I hate to use this term, a nutritious environment.
Yeah, and we like to say it's a safe space to fail while you learn new skills, while you try out new ways of being, try out putting your ideas out into the world, right? When your idea is brand new, it's like small and wrinkly and cries a lot and it needs a lot of care. You don't want the world criticizing it yet. But yeah, I was just really impressed how all these different dimensions, the self-confidence, the emotional level, the intellectual level with the information and the tools. So there's a lot of different things autonomy provides, and it's like, which nutrients do we need, right? That's what we end up taking from it. And so we're going to open the floor for Q&A in a few minutes. So start thinking of your questions and you'll be able to either unmute and ask Paul directly. If you're unable to do that, you can write in the chat and I'll read it out. And I just want to talk about what your next steps are if you're interested in learning more about autonomy this season. So my co-host James linked the autonomy primer in the chat, and that'll be sent to your emails as well. And the primer, it's our new version of the obstacle course. It's a way to just try out what autonomy is like. You hear a bit about Rich talking about all the different subjects that autonomy covers. It's a really easy program, a few videos to watch, and you can watch them at your own time. And it's designed to be similar to the autonomy experience. So you can get a feel, am I ready for this? Does this feel good? And once you've taken the primer, then we recommend you set up a blueprint call. And that's just where you talk with a graduate like myself or Paul or whoever's serving in that role this season. We'll do a one-on-one Zoom or audio call with you. It could be 15 minutes if you want a quick chat, or up to an hour. And we'll really just listen to where you are in life, share our experience with autonomy, and recommend how that can help. So those are your next steps. Check out the primer, and when you're ready, schedule your blueprint call. And I'd really like to thank Paul so far for his answers. This has been a great interview. And of course, the replay will be posted online. And now we have plenty of time just for your questions. So feel free to unmute and jump in on autonomy. The first week, no one ever jumps in. And by the end of the program, we're fighting each other to...
I'm jumping in first.
Oh,
I'm doing it live.
Mr. Grove. Yes, let's hear from you.
Hi, Carl. How you doing? Nice to see
Great.
you again.
Good to hear
Polly,
you.
what's up? Oh,
How you doing,
man,
Rich?
what a long, strange trip. All right, so when I first met Paul, he came to my apartment. We had this little one-room apartment where everything was crammed into, and he had this hockey bag, and he's from Canada. So I was like, this is so stereotypical. And he opens the camera bag, or it's like a hockey bag, and there's the camera equipment. So he's got lights, tripods, he's got his camera, he's got these microphones, Sennheiser microphones. And I was like, wow, I've never seen any, but like I didn't take mass media in high school. Like I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. And it's like he has these magical wizard skills. He's setting all this stuff up and then he's interviewing me. And I'm like, bro, who taught you to do this? Is this a Canadian school thing? You guys all learn how to. And he's like, no, I taught myself how to do it. So then I was like, will you please teach me? Because, what's the model number on these mics and how do I set up a Manfrotto tripod and all this sort of stuff. So like I was off to the races within like weeks of meeting Paul. That's how influential he was, because I needed to learn how to express myself and get my active literacy, skills on. I taught myself how to podcast, but that's just audio. The whole video thing was convoluted and confusing to me, but within a year or so, I made my first 4-hour documentary, and then I made another one, and then I finally started using like narration and audio, but that took a while. So I developed my skills. And going to like, how much are your skills worth? Once I got my hands on the cameras and I knew how to set them up and get the, achieve the desired result, I was getting invitations to film weddings, and then I was filming bands. Man, I got paid 5 grand one night to film these bands. My buddy he was like a touring manager. He's like, I'm going to have all the bands play at one place. I want you to do interviews on the tour bus. I want you to film live, all the bands playing. And I'm like, I could do this all myself. And I brought a couple friends, and we set up the jib crane, and we had like 7 cameras going. And it was just amazingly complex experience that I had no idea what I was getting into, but it sounded good for 5 grand for one night, right? So like after like 3 or 4 weeks of editing the footage and doing all that stuff, I was like, okay, that 5 grand doesn't go that far. But from there, you start to figure out what is in your sweet spot, right? Oh, I can film a wedding on a weekend and pull down $5,000 to $10,000. Yes, please. And then I learned how to hang a shingle out there. So there's a place called Gig Salad, and you could go on there and list your services. And when people need services, you get sent leads. And it felt so good to have a $2,000 a day rate to film and to be able to turn down jobs all the time, because what I'm doing for myself is working and I don't need that extra money. You can't pay me 2 or 10 grand to leave my house and leave my project. I'm making the ultimate history lesson right now. I'm filming Bill Binney, but it was always good to have those skills to fall back on. And when I did need money or new camera equipment, I go do a gig. I would go do work I didn't want to do, and then I would take money for that exchange, and then I'd buy, a new lens or a new tripod or the jib crane and sliders and dollies and steady cam vests and all the shoulder mounted rigs. All that stuff's very expensive. Like cinema cameras are like 50 or $100,000 now. Like the whole thing is a thing. You have to learn how to take the things and make money with them, and then being able to make more money than you need with them is like, that's true freedom right there. Because then you can balance the rest of your life with in taking that money and putting it into experiences and friendships and helping your family and just living a low stress attitude, which I guess like not many people ever get to that altitude because they don't know those rites of passage. But I think we should all know them. It's cruel and unusual that they like throw us in the ocean but don't teach us how to swim.
And thank you for that, Rich. I mean, that's beautiful and poignant. I was just gonna say, like, I just loved movies growing up. And when I was 13 or 14 and got my hands on a little VHS camcorder, I would start filming little shorts with my brothers, or film little claymation shorts, or film little sketches. And I just fell in love with the idea of storytelling and being able to show somebody something and make them laugh or make them chuckle or cry or angry, what, just being able to influence someone's emotion with your story, I realized is a very powerful force. And you were one of the first people, especially in 2006, who put out a cohesive story that had all these elements that all tied together, right? I'd never heard of Darren Brown or the 8-player chess, I want to call it a trick, but like, you framed things in a way that no one
The
else
method to
had.
beat the grandmasters, because that's what you need to do in this game. So I thought it was a good metaphor.
Yeah. And just it awakened my mind to a different way of storytelling, because I thought there's all this extra important information I'm learning, but if it could be told through storytelling, I'm sure it already would have, right? I realized we're that generation of people who are who lived before the internet, right? Before the great information awakening, and we still have like one foot in the analog world, one foot in the digital world, unlike the newest generations. And so I think that reverence of storytelling, and better yet, the understanding of storytelling's power, not just informationally but emotionally, and how you can tell someone all the intellectual information in the world, but they don't retain it as much unless there's that emotional anchor to really keep it present in your mind. And so if anything, like that's been, I think, both of our development is we went realizing that we have important stories to tell and important information to share, and you can see it as our work progresses, especially by the time you got to interviewing Binny and John Taylor Gatto. It's not just the quality, but it's like the production value brings out the emotionality. You connect more, not just with what's being said, but how it's being said. And like they almost feel like event type films where these are like game changers. They're revelatory. And so that just took things to a whole other level that I don't think I could achieve with Hijacking Humanity. And so now we're at a point where it's like my goal, at least in the near term, is I actually want to go all the way to making a full narrative film that reflects the themes that I think are important in this world right now. So um, that's my next project for the year, other than working with my wife on her YouTube channel, which has grown very successful thanks to AUTONOMY, is working on a feature
Yeah, it's
film.
10 times the size of my YouTube channel. That's how.
That is just a criminal travesty as far as I'm concerned. It's
No, she's totally deserving, man. Like you guys
I
are
agree.
you guys are changing the game, and I'm just looking to glean from what you guys are laying down.
I think the biggest thing that we've learned in that game is that there is a lot of people looking for answers and a lot of people looking for motivation and inspiration. We're all up against an increasing tide of like cynicism and I don't want to say hopelessness, but a lot of helplessness. A lot of people feeling helpless, but they're not actually helpless. And so I think that's what your work, my work, and everyone in AUTONOMY who's interested, we're all interested in going away from feeling disempowered and cynical towards the world and trying to re-empower ourselves, awaken, like when you realize how much you can actually do when you just apply 2 hours here or there in focused work, you can get so much accomplished. And all the things that you teach from for organizing your time to reclaiming your time, getting things done, how to prioritize, just like how to making lists, organizing things, they seem like oh yeah, it's so obvious, it's so simple, but giving it in that structured way and then having people being able to do exercises to apply these things and see the results, again, it's just a game changer. Because especially, and I love this part, the attitude of consistency, of showing up, of integrity. Once we started applying that to our YouTube channel, the real story is my wife went for almost 7 months without making a single dime doing YouTube. And the thing that was the game changer for us, that started at suddenly 10,000 subscribers, then 100,000 subscribers, was consistency. 100%. We put a schedule of like, here's when these videos are going to be coming out every single day. You'll get these 3 videos on this day, these 3 on this day, these 4 on this day. That promise to the audience, people started showing up, people started subscribing. They show up and see, oh, you've got a history of work from the past 6 months where you kept that promise. Oh, sign me up. And that has been the thing that's told the algorithm, like they upload at the same time every day, they don't miss a day, their audience keeps showing up, and you can see it in your analytics. The audience keeps showing up because they trust that we're going to be there tomorrow, and they trust, based on the quality of what they've seen, that it's worth their time to show up.
Well,
And
that's why it's
so
controversial, right? Because I used to have a 47-minute average video watch time on my videos until the things I said went, beyond what YouTube was willing to promote. But I
yeah,
told
it's
folks in 2019, you got to get off YouTube. You need your own personal media platform. And if you make money on YouTube, that's nice, but never become dependent on it because they can take it away for such frivolous reasons. And I watched a lot of my colleagues not listen and they lost everything. Whereas I've never really needed YouTube to help the people I help because, there's other ways to find them like referrals.
and that's 100% true. Like we started YouTube. We had 3 other failed like non-successful channels before my wife's channel took off. And I would attribute so much of the success to the fact that it's non-controversial but still providing value to people. And that's definitely one of the most important things for people to know, is if they're doing anything remotely controversial or outside the mainstream, even if it's empowering, even if it's 100% truthful, there are corporate interests at play that will deboost and downrank certain kinds of stuff, right? Even if it's 100% truthful and empowering and important for people to know. And that is, I agree, like a sad state of affairs. We've taken steps so we don't want to just be on YouTube. So we release all of my wife's content on Rumble, Rockfin, Odyssey, archive.org. We use Content Safe, the video replication service. And so because we don't take for granted that YouTube could just disappear like that, like I've seen, from James Corbett to tons of people unfairly deplatformed or demonetized. So it is not, even if you're highly successful at it, it is not, you should never make it all your eggs in that one basket. So for us, we've diversified with ebooks, right? We've written a couple of ebooks and we sell them through the website. And, we get probably more sales from like Rumble or Rockfin than we do from YouTube for the ebooks, just because it's a different type of audience, right? So yeah, I would just say if you join Autonomy, you're going to be pretty easily led down a path that challenges your mindset. If you're stuck in the employee mindset, will help you shift to telling yourself what to do rather than waiting for someone to tell you what to do. And that's a game changer, because then you become the author of your own book, of your own destiny. And once you've made peace with that level of responsibility, you wake up every day, instead of dreading going to work, you look forward to like what opportunities are in store. What do I get to spend my time doing, learning, connecting? And yeah, you're defining your own purpose in life,
Yeah,
which again,
I haven't played hooky on myself in 20 plus years. I can't remember the last time I called in and be like, "Oh, I'm too sick to come to work today," and went and had some fun. But I used to do that all through college and my career.
yeah, if you get sick, it's not fun. You can't, the show must go on a lot of times, but it's being your own boss. The double-edged sword is like, yeah, if you want to sleep in till 10, you can, but you probably shouldn't if you want to get some stuff done. You know what I mean? So, uh, if you're someone who looks at yourself as lazy or procrastinator, and you want to like find a constructive way to change those habits into something that's more beneficial to you,
You got to learn to ride without the training wheels. That's what it's all
100%.
about. You can't be scared of it.
Yeah. I wonder if there's any questions from anyone.
I did get one you sort of answered it a little bit, but I got one question about your wife and what she learned from autonomy and how she put it to use. And I also read tarot, and I watched her video on Taurus tarot reading for the week. So
Oh, sweet.
that was really cool. But yeah, I mean, do you know if she had any? I got
Oh,
the
yeah.
idea of consistency on YouTube, but it's also like you're finding all these tools. But what was her
For my
experience?
wife, her
Yeah.
biggest one was to not give up, right? She perseverance, persistence, and I'll tell you why. We were both put out of work during COVID, and she was living off her savings. And we watched this BBC Maestro course in the summer of 2022. He talks about tarot reading. She's like, hey, that would be neat. She decided to try and get into tarot readings, to do private readings for people around the neighborhood, or go to the mall crystal shop and sit there and do tarot readings, because we just needed to make some money. And she thought starting a YouTube channel would be good to advertise her services for private readings. And so we got by, but 6 or 7 months, it definitely wasn't making ends meet, and YouTube was making $0. And so she was right at the edge of running essentially out of savings. And she got a huge, super strong offer to go back into the dental industry, where she had worked for 20 years at what would be North Vancouver's biggest practice, dental practice. And the money would have been double what she made before at the last practice she worked at, that let her go because of the COVID stuff. And so she was so tempted. She had that weekend to decide whether she was going to shut down the channel and go back into working in dental practices, or keep going with the channel. And that weekend she got monetized on YouTube, and I think made like $9 or something. But she decided not to give up. That was the key moment. She's like, I could go back to the comfortable past with all the stress I know that's going to be there, but a regular paycheck, but it's going to take like 16 hours a day and 6 days a week. And I know I'm not going to have fun, but at least I'll have money. And she said, you know what? No, I'm not gonna give up on this channel thing. I just have this feeling. I have what I've learned, and something is telling me not to give up on this. And now here we are 2.5 years later. And yeah, she's almost at 500,000 subscribers. Um, and we started a second channel that just passed 11,000 subscribers. And now we really have a handle on how to do this. So now I want to give back by sharing to people how to grow not just their YouTube channel, but like any social media, any videos that you want to use to connect with people for whatever reason, and how to improve their video game, how to improve their production value, and my extensive technological background, and just try and provide that information to people, whoever it's relevant to, so that they can express themselves better and hopefully build a life independently and autonomously.
Excellent. I actually just got a related question in the chat from Richard B. So I wanted to read it out or interpret it as I think he's asking. Because you brought up this idea of it's almost like the world's going to test us. Like, oh, you said you want to be this new type of person or start this new venture, but that also means you're leaving something behind. Like you're sacrificing something you said wasn't what you wanted, but it's like you're going to be tested. So part Richard's question is like, if you stop being an employee, are you necessarily going to take a pay cut if you go independent? Like, is it like chase money or chase passion? Is it that black and white, or is it just a different type of journey?
I think it's about prioritizing what matters most to you. Is it happiness or secure, the feeling of security? Because security is not always what it seems to be, or stability or comfort. And I think because a lot of people take the path of least resistance because it's the easier path. I really had to shift that mindset of always looking for the easy way, the cheat codes, the shortcuts, because you don't actually get better at something. You don't actually learn the lesson if you cheat your way through it, if you have a shortcut or a cheat code. It's only through the experience. I've been doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu now for about 2 years. There's no way to like cheat your way to the next belt. You have to keep showing up and get beaten up and be super uncomfortable. But little by little, week by week, you get a little bit better. Your body starts responding in different ways. Your stress level goes down, and you just suddenly, I'm not intimidated when I go into a role with somebody, even if they're like way bigger than me. I'm just like, hey, I know how to breathe. I know how to keep my stuff calm. And no amount of like secret video with these tricks would have like gotten me there more quickly. So I think like the principles I learned in autonomy, they're not meant to be cheat codes per se. They're meant to be principles that you, once you integrate them into your life and you apply them, that your actions and the results speak way louder than any of the words that you're absorbing. It's about how you apply those words into your actual life to motivate you, to inspire yourself, to inspire others to want to work with you. And you realize that a lot of these systems are like communication or logic or grammar, all have existed for quite a while. And there's a wealth of knowledge to like absorb, and then you start to realize how those different things are applicable, right? If you're a person who constantly mishears people and attacks a straw man version of what they're saying, well, you probably don't want to be doing that because you're not going to be having productive conversations. So learning about the logical fallacies and be like, oh, I'm doing a straw man argument. Okay, I know not to do that. And so it helps you shape your own personality into the best. I hate saying the best version of yourself, but a better, more self-aware version of yourself. And that's where you really get to flex your own willpower, right? Because I think we all have dreams of what we want to do, but we've all got either a real or imagined barrier or blockade that we feel we need to move, whether it's a lack of access to skills or money or whatever. But actually, all of it's doable if you know how to apply yourself And so I think that's for autonomy, it serves a lot of value to people by connecting them from where they're at right now on their journey to where they want to be, helps them write their own map and develop their own compass to get there, but it's not going to walk the journey for you, if that makes sense. It's just going to, Rich doesn't want to give you fish. He wants to teach you how to fish so you can go fish for yourself.
Yeah, and I think people do get stuck when they hear about this, is they think they might have to quit their day job before they start learning how to fish. But most people don't do that because it is a process, right? Like it can take, whether it's weeks or months or could be years of transformation depending where you're at. But the important thing is to get started and to start learning those new mindsets and new skills. You can bring it to your current place of employment. You can go for promotions or new responsibilities there. Or one thing we learn in autonomy is just learning how to make an offer, like something you provide to the world, whether it's on the internet or a physical service or product, that you could earn extra money. um, you could do nights and weekends or depending on your schedule, but you learn how to ask, bring something to the market and get value. And I know you've talked a lot about your journey, but were there points where you used your autonomy skills to make new offers, or how did you approach that?
Yeah, and I'll speak to the idea of pay cuts. Like, instead of, because nobody wants to feel like they're going backwards, and especially if you're living like somewhat paycheck to paycheck, a lot of us can't afford to take any form of pay cut because our bills are kind of matching what we're earning, right? We tend to spend what we earn. So you don't want to just like abandon your job and start this entrepreneurial endeavor that you're not even sure is feasible. I think the biggest skill that how autonomy ties into that is, say you've got a job right now, only you know if that job is fulfilling to you, leading to your happiness, giving you true stability or a little bit of anxiety. And so you have to decide how much bandwidth you have outside of your main job. And so my recommendation, and especially if you take autonomy, it'll teach you how to do this, is to start developing your side hustle. And that side hustle could be you spending 2 or 3 hours a week, one evening, to developing or writing an ebook, or learning a new skill, or taking a night class, something that either builds your skill set or results in some kind of product or service offering that you can put out to the world. And then the autonomy skill that teaches you how to attract an audience, build clientele, build a newsletter, build that email list, make those offers to people who come to your website, and then connect with people who have already invested in your products and communicate with them further. All of those steps are outlined so that you can make the transition from your full-time employee type thing over to eventually your side hustle becoming your main hustle, or having multiple side hustles that eventually the combined multiple streams of income outperform your main hustle. And so then you're able to divest yourself from that employee job and have your 1, 2, or 3 side hustles become your main deal. And so the model for that would be, I worked at Vancouver Film Studios for 8 years and felt like they didn't treat me too well at the end. They put me out of work for 6 months because I wasn't compliant with a medical request. And I came back and worked there another year and a half. But from that time on, I was like, I need an escape plan. I need to develop a side hustle beyond what I'd already been doing, which was just video work on the sides, occasional website work. And so with my wife and I, we decided to invest in a little bit of film equipment. And I started doing, project like side projects for people who wanted to film shorts or promotional videos, $1,000 here, $1,000 there. And once I felt like I was earning enough on that side hustle on the regular, my wife was like, hey, do you want to work with me editing my videos full time for my channel? And so I was able to add what she could pay me combined with my side hustles, outperformed what my full time job was doing. So then mathematically in October 2023, I was like, this makes sense. I'm going to leave the studio after 8 years. And they're like, are you sure you want to leave? You've got dental and medical and all these benefits and stuff. And now I'm making like 3 times what I earned at the studio. So I'm so glad I made that decision. But at the beginning, I was like, is this the right decision? Am I gonna regret this in 6 months? What if my wife's channel fails? What if my side hustles dry up? All of those things are possible. The studio ended up selling and laying off like 60% of the staff after I left. So, and I didn't know that was gonna happen, but it's just something told me to make this move, right? So definitely try not to move backwards, but if you can develop your side hustle, and autonomy is really good at helping you shift that mindset so that you're comfortable, ironically, building those side hustles, incorporating them, and then making that jump over. And you'll know when it's the right time, because 3 months of earnings that outpace your normal day job, you're probably on a good track.
And I love that metaphor you shared of having an escape plan, or you could think of it like future proofing your career. Because as you pointed out, we don't have this static society where you're just going to keep the same job for decades. We had a pandemic, even government jobs aren't safe. And those were the historically work for 50 years and retire with a pension.
Exactly.
Hey, Paul, I have a
Yes.
question if I could jump in. When you were in that questioning phase, when you were leaving the steady job to go break out on your own, how did you combat that sort of inner dialogue of this could fail? Like, what do I do? Like, how did you overcome that?
Well, I'm sad to say part of it was resentment fueled, because I was really dissatisfied with how I was treated at my job. So I don't want to swear, but I was like, F these guys. So that part of my Capricorn belligerence definitely helped me make the emotional break. I did have the fear. What I did is in the couple months leading up to it, I reduced my budget, my frivolous spending. I organized my finances a little bit better and restructured part of my debt to get a lower interest payment. I just did a few things that I'd been putting off to get organized to lower my overall monthly nut, as it were, so that if things didn't work out, then I would have more time to essentially make a pivot if I needed to. And so you don't want to like paint yourself into a corner, but depending on the number of skills you have, the number of side hustles you have, that it does give you more flexibility, right? I knew I could freelance doing IT or consulting. I knew that, my video work would continue to grow. But you gotta stay on it, right? So, and then I also wasn't sure, like when I first started editing with my wife, it took up 3.5, 4 days of my week, because she puts out 26 videos a week. And now doing it a year and a half, I've got it down to about 2 days of work just for my wife. So then I've got 3 days to work on all my side hustles or my main projects. And so it's a nice balance. I think the longer you do something, you get better at it. And the longer you work for yourself, the more efficient you get. So you're able to recapture some of that time and then reinvest it into more skill building or another side hustle.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted just to announce for those of you interested in the next season of Autonomy, on Friday, March 14th, Richard Grove is leading an open session called The Ultimate Freedom Skill Set, and it's about what's going on in Autonomy Season 13. So Richard and the Autonomy community invite you to take a look at what Autonomy has to offer, and he'll take questions from the audience. So it's kind of an open Q&A, but he's going to talk about the ultimate freedom skill set. And I believe the next season's kicking off at the end of this month. So it's just a great time to get involved. And I'm trying to think, were there any more questions for Paul tonight? It's been a really great conversation so far.
We have autonomy screenings tomorrow with Paul for What You've Been Missing, which is our 2010 pilot series.
Awesome.
It's all about the history of how they broke the education system, turned it into schooling and indoctrination. And it's a really good foreshadowing for why I created the autonomy course.
Absolutely. That's going to be a fun one.
Okay. What time is that? I'm guessing that's why Quest is on Thursday this week, right? So
Yeah, it's 6:30 Friday Eastern time.
Excellent. So definitely tune in for that. All right, last call for questions. I think really good.
Great job tonight, guys. Paul, your insights of the autonomy course, and just a very, very inspiring story, and just wanted to say thank you very much for being here. Carl, you killed it, man. Thank you very much for hosting. You did a fantastic job.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love the autonomy community, and people like Paul are the types of people you're going to meet inside of autonomy. So, it's great to just come back every so often and contribute, and just remember the values you learn in this program. Just a reminder on the next steps, we've got the autonomy primer course that'll be in your email. That'll give you a great taste of how autonomy works, and schedule your blueprint call with one of our graduates. The links are in your email. And yeah, you can check out the other Quest replays. And if you're watching this on replay, thank you so much. And especially all 24 of us who tuned in live tonight. Thank you to each of you. It's good to be in your presence again. And Paul, any last words about what future autonomy students need to know to get over that hurdle to schedule their blueprint call? How do they know if it's the right time for them?
If they want to check their cynicism at the door and figure out a way to harness their own power, to get out of their own way, and to learn the best, most effective way to not only know yourself, but to work with yourself and others, then autonomy is going to really unlock a lot of those perspectives that you need for self-reflection and then self-empowerment to frankly design and live your dreams, because that's what I feel like I'm doing. And yeah, it's only in the last 5 years since I took autonomy that I've felt confident enough and empowered enough to actually make those dreams happen, as opposed to just daydreaming them and wondering if I'll ever be the man who can do what I want to do. So believe in yourself, and help autonomy help you believe in yourself even more.
Hey, and word of encouragement to anyone that thinks that doing a call with a graduate's triggering complexity. Look at the upside. I don't sell the course to just anybody. And the benefit of that is when you get to the other side of that interview, only the coolest people on the planet have made it through. So there's no drama. And that's where we can feel comfortable to fail in front of each other so we can learn new skills. It's the thing that they chastised out of us in schooling and prevented us from learning and gave us the learned helplessness in the first place. And this is how the antidote is designed very purposefully to help reverse those ill effects. So everyone else here has been through the process. That's how everyone who's ever gone through autonomy has gotten in, all 1,000+ people. You can do it too. You're more than enough. And this is going to help you really go to the next level if you think it's time for you to do that.
Yeah, and like, just imagine, Paul, if you didn't make that change in your life at that fork in the road, you'd be looking back today, oh, what could I have been? But now you know that answer. And we like to say, well, if you're not going to begin now, how's it going to be different if you join in 6 months and the next season or in a year? Like there's no better time to start than the present.
You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Yes.
Wayne Gretzky, Michael
Wayne
Scott.
Gretzky, that's right. Prime Minister Wayne Gretzky, that's right. Thank you guys. Thank you, James, for everything. Thank you as well, Carl and Rich, for showing up on the call, and to everyone who made it onto the call. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to anything I had to say. And to anyone listening to this in the post replay, yeah, check out Autonomy. You will get whatever energy you put into it, you will get back, because it's a magnifier of your intent.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you, James, Richard, Leah, and everyone else. Definitely check out that screening tomorrow night at 6:30. It's going to be epic. And then the open Q&A next Friday. And check your email for the links to everything we mentioned tonight. So that wraps up this week of Autonomy Quest. Thank you. Have a good night, and stay autonomous. Peace out.